Hello and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. This is part 2 of looking at Thomas Cole's The Oxbow, painting it in fast and loose watercolor landscape painting style. So far, the underpainting, we did our wet and wet. Now we're going to look at the next stage and play around and kind of bring more detail into everything. The whole point of this series is to look at master landscape painters. So far I looked at 3 paintings, 2 from Fielding Watercolor and 1 from Thomas Gerton. Grab some Payne's Gray, mix a little bit of alizarin crimson, play around with this sky. And the goal of these are to add, first of all, more compositional elements and tricks into my bag of tricks, my repertoire, to pick up tonal variety and approaches from master painters, to work on perspective and different ideas. For example, right now I'm just playing with this sky, this cloud, and one thing that I just hit very hard that I had learned was that your sky, you can really have just like a myriad of different brush strokes, just different directions, just really having fun with it, different gradations, etc. While the water in a landscape painting, especially a still river or a pond, horizontal brush strokes are a great way to represent that that flow, that plane that's taking place. Mixing some light red oxide into this, trying to get on the purpler side of things. We have played around with gouache and different effects in some of these. I've also been perusing Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting, picking up different ideas, which I had read in the past. It's a great read, but it does get overwhelming. Using our paper towel to soften things, to create a variety of effects. I did pull out a fresh water container for mixing the white gouache. For me, I have a tendency to, I guess, not wash anything, but the moment I wash anything, it gets super dirty. I'm going to spread this white around. And while I do that, I'll harp on Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting that often your lightest tonal value should be theoretically the sky. Your light is coming from that region, it's going to pass through it. Your lightest region, the sky. The second thing from there will be your ground, your flat ground, is receiving most of the light. It is filtering through the sky, through the clouds. The angle of the light may affect it. Then your third, and then we're going into the tonal darker values. Your upright, so your slanted mountains are going to catch some light, so they're going to be a little bit darker than the ground. And then your trees, your upright, are going to be very dark tonally in comparison, due to the fact that they're receiving the least amount of light. I'm already losing the feel of his sky. I'm using the white gouache as a white. I could have potentially used the white of the paper. What might help is grabbing a little bit of ultramarine blue and mixing that in and seeing how that works in the sky. That might be a little bit too much. So I'm going to push this around, see what I can do to minimize it. Kind of do a little bit of the negative painting aspect. I feel like with the clouds we don't really need harsh edges. But I think at that point it's up to the artist and the way the artist wants to interpret it. To quote Carlson, what you put in and what you leave out and the way you adjust things is the signature of the painter. I want it to now be that horizon sky. There's a glow in the sky right there. So I'm going to mix some raw sienna into that. I try not to put the gouache directly onto my regular palette just because of the chalkiness and how it contaminates everything. All right, let's leave the sky alone for right now. This has a green aspect to it. In the previous part, I had mentioned atmospheric perspective, that as things recede back in the picture plane, you're going to lose your yellows, then you lose your reds, and then things go blue. That being said, this is kind of like a very muted blue, so I'm mixing Prussian blue, lemon yellow, and then muting it with raw sienna. Now, I am all about the illusion of detail, but I have not yet figured out the illusion of detail with mountains. Joe Menza does a really great job with them. Here I'm just kind of breaking up my brush strokes. It kind of shows the different grouping of trees, etc. Gets a little darker and warmer, so more raw sienna. It'll help it come forward in the picture plane. And the cloud coverage is hitting this portion. I had avoided painting mountains for the longest time, and when I do paint them, I use a very formulaic approach where I kind of just warm them up as I move forward in the picture plane with them. The reason I avoid mountains is being down in Louisiana, it's just not a local scene that people see. But within Hudson River Valley painting and the picturesque painting scenes and the romantic painting scenes, you're going to have mountains as a motif. And I mean, I absolutely love them. But I think that was letting myself gear too much towards locale and local interests. sometimes like I'll do a painting. This is greener. I'm doing too much raw sienna. Sorry, burnt sienna. Now the greenness doesn't matter too much. You know, I'm not really too focused on color. I'm really focused on tonality. But it's just important for the perspective. We have so many little trees. I have a print of this one. I've mentioned that before, hanging up in my classroom. I teach high school math and physics whenever there's kids that sign up for physics. And when you look at the print of this one, there's just so much detail, especially like each one of these trees has their own shadow throughout the painting, if you look throughout the whole thing. But I'm not going to sit there and do all that. My goal is to create the illusion of those tree lines and those paths. Darker shadow over this fella. And there's trees all around that rim. We'll have to probably come back with the number 1 and play around there. Okay, let's move to this foreground. I'm just grabbing cadmium yellow mainly because I accidentally poured it out. Ultramarine. The brush hasn't been cleaned, but I'm going to use it to start creating the illusion of all these trees in this upper area. Grab lemon yellow. So we're brighter, we're yellower in this region. This is the hake brush approach, but thinking if you take the quill and you do little swooshes, that might give you a better effect of trees as opposed to foliage. I'm not sure if I have my language right there. But an interesting thing from Carlson's guide, and then you see it here, is that trees will kind of, if this is your ground, will bloom up and will have a convex shape to the top of them, meaning not concave. You're going to have that rounding at the peaks. So that swoosh effect might be a way for us to give the illusion of many tree detail. This is some lemon yellow mixed in with that Prussian blue. Some raw sienna to start putting in this tree. That's going to be interesting once we really settle down for that. Some more raw sienna. In my second study of a fielding painting, I started using gouache mixed in with my foreground colors, and I'm not sure how much I like that effect. Mainly because it feels like you start having two different mediums or opacities. Maybe it's the right way to go. Maybe it gives more solidity to the foreground and more atmospheric area effect to the background. We can try and experiment with that. And we're going to have the dark spots that show through where less light is getting to it. And the outer edges are going to be brighter. So essentially just stamping with this fella. Which I don't know why I never did that before. If I have, I don't remember. But I know doing that, I would always be like, I hate the way the quill doesn't give me a nice pointy mark. It gives me this rounded mark. But hey, great for the tops of trees when you have trees in mass. Scraping, pulling back to the white of paper, whatever I can, where I can. There's an umbrella right here and a fella sitting here painting, a painter in the painting. All right, I'm going to do a dry off so we can kind of see where everything's at, and then we'll see what the next stage is. All right, so far I'm going to insult myself here, and it feels I want to use the word childish currently, the approach, where there's a lot of masses put in and it has the shapes, but it's going in the direction of application that I don't enjoy. So I'm taking Payne's Gray and trying to deal with some of the issues here. And I feel like, you know, comparatively looking at the master painting, and Thomas Cole was an absolute master, that might be something that is also influencing that opinion. But let's see what we can do. I felt like all I did was just make that more of a mass. And if you follow frequently, you know that I don't do brushes like this in the sky after the dry off. Let's see if we can push this in that direction. Grab a little bit of gouache. Let's see how that affects this. There's white's right behind it. And it is a sketch study, so I shouldn't be too hard on myself. Maybe that will give the effect that I'm looking for. Just a washy wash. And how it carries over onto this mass. Let's see. You move this. What light is causing that? Look at the top corner. I think I should leave that alone. I'm using a number 6 quill. I just picked up a different one. Don't know why. Probably because I wanted more broadness in the sky. Looking for a warmer aspect here. It may be me losing the subtle varieties within these marks and these washes that's getting me. See if we can push a little bit green, or at least orange. And then push this area greener, lemon yellow. Hey, Percy Poo. Yeah. Go pure ultramarine for our distant mountains. A little too dark. What's up? Percy Poo says, don't be too hard on yourself, Dad. That's a distant mountain overlapping that little bit of glow. Oh, Percy, you can't walk on the painting. You coming to give me pointers? Come sit on my lap. Sit on my lap. There you go. All right. Let's get more variety in this foreground. So cadmium yellow. And I'm going to use this quill in the same fashion of trying to create the peaks. This is cad yellow since I have that out. And it starts going over this lighter area. And just by simply going over it should give us that glow of that edge. Percy wags her tail like a dog. I think you can't get paint on your tail. She just gave me I could do whatever I want look. Just dry brush and just trying to get a myriad of textures. This is the second time I used that word this video. Because I don't use that word often, so. Raw sienna. You can use gouache with raw sienna on this tree. We're going to wind up doing another dry off just because I now have so much water everywhere. Here, Percy, down. Okay, let's do a dry off, see where we're at now. I think, so a few things during the dry off. I'm not satisfied with those clouds. I am putting out a little bit of lamp black on the palette, and I want to see the depth that we can get from that. One thing I need to remind myself is that, once again, it's a fast and loose painting, and I'm also looking at a super master painting, like super duper master, and also that it is originally painted in oil. So we'll see how just kind of a heavy application of black can affect our sky. Grab a little bit of water and then get a nicer transition. So I have a lifting taking place here with the brush. So I think that may just be, at this point, me overworking it and the paper maybe not handling it. And now that we finally have a black out on the palette, I could experiment with that in other aspects. We have a glare from one of the lights here, so I apologize. I think that's this light. Yeah. My paper is buckling a little bit, but no, it's fine. So I'm going to use black to accentuate. However, this may lead back to a previous conclusion that I had mentioned in this video, where pure white gouache may not be the answer for highlights. Maybe the gouache mixed with a color. Brand-wise, this is it's actually Daniel Smith black, lamp black. Why I bought a black from Daniel Smith, I'm really not sure. I have a few tubes from them. I mean, they're really high quality products, but you know, the price is kind of outside of a teacher's range, especially fast and loose. That's too much dark. I'm going in the wrong direction. Let's mix it with cad yellow. Get a little bit of kind of a green effect. There we go. And using that almost natural shape that seems to occur with the quill brushes, that rounding effect, and stamping that in. Oh. It is interesting how the intensity of the Gouache has persevered throughout the painting. That pigment is definitely next level and definitely threw me off my game. So I'm very happy that I bought it, because I think there's a lot of fun things I could challenge myself with that. Let's grab, let's do the Gouache with the black, see what type of greens we can get. You get a sickly color, which is perfectly fine. I think earlier, so one of my concerns was that it looked essentially childish, the approach, because it was very massed in, very repeated pattern with the stamping, and it didn't have some of the variety that I had wanted to see. I'm now kind of shortcutting that by using the black and the darks to create more variety there. We still haven't really taken on this tree. I'm going to use this to stamp in some of these fellas. Even these masses don't have the subtle tonality changes that that the original painting had. Let's see if we can adjust that. So that's going to have to be one of my goals now. And I had talked about in the beginning the subtle tonal changes, and I think that would be the correct goal for some of these elements. Perspective wise, you can see they get closer as you get further away. You start losing the detail in the shadow. So I think for me, wet and wet stage is where I'd be most likely able to get those varieties. If you made it this far, congratulations, because I know there's a lot of rambling in these videos. It's a lot of me trying to figure things out. I'm going to put out a little bit more gouache, and we're going to utilize gouache and pigment watercolor for this tree. So I put it in a pan, and I try to grab some pigment from my watercolor palette. It's too white. So it's going to create, I think the term is body color, where it will have that opacity. It'll help this gouache, this color, sit on top. Raw sienna mixed into it. You could, of course, have convenience colors of different tubes of gouache. And painting solely in gouache is fun. It's definitely a different element. One of my Facebook painting friends, Donna, Miss Donna Winters, I believe is her last name. She oil paints, tonalist oil painter, really fantastic with landscapes, just absolutely beautiful. And she has been experimenting with gouache and some of them too, and has been, you could see the delight and excitement that she has, mixing some ultramarine in. Trying to get a little bit of a grayer for the rock formations. So now this is the part that I was kind of mentioning earlier, is that if I start putting gouache into the foreground, it starts to create a contrast within the painting of that opacity. And I'm concerned, I'm also just curious how that affects the overall vibe of the painting. So let me know what you think. Here is some closer to pure white. I had mentioned the story about white earlier with about Mr. Ray on the Ron Ranson Disciple pages, and some of my thoughts and ideas in that regard. Now this is almost blacker. Yeah, this is blacker than the background, so I may have painted myself into a corner. I do have black gouache. I'm going to experiment with that, but first let's get a little bit of green going to stand out against the background. I'm pulling some cad yellow. This will be fun. Let's see how that looks. That is more in this region. So now that I have some of that color there, I can put some of that out. Use my finger just to break up that monotony. And that comes up there. But it's a darker green. Some more ultramarine. Okay, we're not tonal wise in the right direction. Grabbing some raw sienna, burnt sienna. Might have to just grab sap green as a convenience color here and see how it sits against it. I did find in the past when I experimented with McCracken Black from Daniel Smith that gave a good solid black that stayed in place. But I really don't want to be using so many different pigments and colors in these experiments. So let's grab the number 4 rigger and utilize that to put out that lamp black that we'd put out. And we'll just try to go as much from the tube as possible. When I said may have painted myself in a corner, I actually didn't mean to make that pun since I was painting in the corner here. But that was a pretty good one. What I had meant was, just in case there was any confusion, was that I was layering my black into that sky, into that cloud, to see what was possible. And then having to go over with the darker tree branches, tree trunks, that started to hurt me. And it kind of gives you an idea that, you know, things aren't as dark as they appear, probably. That's still wet, so it's going to diffuse. That's fine. I do like the calligraphy type strokes. he did not use them in this original painting, but I think that adds to the charm of the fast and loose. It's also reminiscent of just pen and ink and washes. Passes in front. Definitely bit off a lot with this one, but very fun. And it is pointing out some of my painting weaknesses, which is fine. Like, I need to be able to identify those things in myself if I want to progress. I'm putting that dark in and then just using my finger to smear it. Let's do a pause and a dry off. All right, I'm pleased with the direction that it's starting to head in now. The gouache helped that foreground pop forward and helps create that difference. I'm going to experiment with some white gouache for some tonal variety here. It's watered down so it'll sink in, and we'll see if that will create some of the gradations that I was talking about. I think there's a lot more that could be done with this one. For example, the water. Let me grab some ultramarine and white gouache, and we'll see how that will affect it. This element might be too strong, but let's see how that helps. See, the same darker water shows up back here. So maybe putting that in here, and this is, once again, a reference to Carlson's guide, is if you have the same color in the background, especially like a bright yellow, if you put it in the foreground as well, that'll help keep that perspective. See what else can be done with this monster of a pigment, Gouache. Mixes a red, a fiery red. I'm gonna try to mute it. It might be too warm. I think the blue or gray is necessary here. Straight from the tube, Gouache. for the white gouache. See, now I'm kind of standing up and just looking at the overall image. I think if this was a little bit cooler right in here where I'm pointing, that would help that sit back a little bit more. Using the side for tree line marks. That seems to work pretty well. I do feel like we have a good sense of depth taking place. I'm going to put out some pure lemon yellow. I grabbed the cadmium yellow again. I had went through my tubes to see what I had needed to order, and so everything got a little bit mixed up. So, just to blab while I do this, the struggles in this region in the foreground are definitely due to the color variety and tonal varieties. Here, the shape of this line is getting me. In fact, I'm going to take a little bit of black just to put that there, just to help create that a little bit. And that helps break up this form some with slight tonal variation into that rolling hill back here that recedes. I wonder if passing over these guys with a purple, ultramarine, and light red oxide would help this sit back further. Yellow. Get a little more green in here. So today's Sunday. Tomorrow starts senior testing for the seniors. They graduate. Their graduation is in 2 weeks. So next week is essentially the last week for them. And I have a few seniors, so I'll be doing senior testing in the morning. In the afternoon, hopefully I'll be able to get more of these studies in. And whenever I'm home from work, I'm enjoying these challenges. I do feel like I'm learning a lot. Number one, I hope you're enjoying them. Let me know what you think, or if you have any interpretations that you think would be interesting to these approaches. I definitely am having so much fun with them. There's an umbrella right here. It stands out white against that background, but Now just relying on expressionist strokes at the end. Then we'll do a dry off and we'll sign it and attribute it as a following of one of my favorite painters, Thomas Cole. He has that, it's a series of 3 or 4 paintings, The Rise and Fall of Civilizations, I think. And it's just a absolutely amazing, monumental feat of painting. All right, so do a dry off and a signing. Let me pause this. All right, with these I've been signing them, and I'll explain what I've been doing if I can find my pen. There we go. I was also thinking, since we're using gouache, we're experimenting, I could start using the micron pens in these for marks, and that might wind up taking place. So I'll put my name, Andrew Broussard, and then I write after, and I write the artist name, Thomas Cole, then quotes, this one is the Oxbow, and if I have room or if I'm certain of the date, this one looks like 1836. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments down below what you would like to see. Let's even make a little bit of marks while I'm blabbing. Let me know in the comments down below what you would like to see. If there's anybody you'd like me to look at. If you like the 2-part style that I'm doing, let me know. Yeah. And y'all have a great day. We're starting to get towards summer. The weather's starting to get hot. So y'all stay safe and make sure y'all stay hydrated. Have a great day.